October 14th, 2023. Interstate 880 outside Fremont, California. A commuter merges into the fast lane at 70 miles per hour as the digital dashboard goes pitch black. The twin electric motors instantly lose all torque. The power steering stiffens into heavy resistance. The driver pumps the brake pedal, but hydraulic assistance drops away, requiring severe manual foot force to slow down. Coasting on momentum, the vehicle rolls onto the shoulder and stops inches from a concrete barrier. The driver pushes the start button repeatedly. The screen stays dead. The driver pulls the electronic door switch. The latch does not click. The windows remain sealed. Trapped inside a soundproof cabin, the driver dials emergency dispatch. Within minutes, emergency switchboards across Northern California are flooded with identical distress calls. Halfway around the world, on the Autobahn outside Munich, another luxury sedan abruptly cuts throttle in heavy traffic.
In central London, 4 electric vehicles freeze simultaneously at a roundabout, creating an instant 2-mile gridlock. Across 16 time zones, brand new electric vehicles are converting themselves into motionless statues on public roads. This was not a power grid failure. It was not a foreign cyber attack. It was the catastrophic aftermath of a routine software deployment pushed into the night. 5 hours earlier, at midnight Greenwich Mean Time, a cloud server in Virginia initiated an automatic over-the-air firmware release. The update, labeled Build 23.41, was scheduled to install silently across 28,000 vehicles while owners slept. Its official engineering objective was simple: designed to recalibrate the thermal cooling thresholds of the high-voltage battery pack for winter. Modern software-defined vehicles operate like smartphones on wheels, receiving massive binary payload updates over cellular networks while parked in residential driveways. Under standard safety protocols, every firmware package undergoes a strict 4-stage canary deployment. Small test batches are pushed first to internal test fleets, followed by regional test rings, before reaching the broader global customer base. On this evening, an internal software flag marked the battery optimization as low-risk maintenance. To meet an aggressive quarterly delivery timeline, software leadership authorized an immediate worldwide rollout, bypassing secondary verification tiers. By 3 in the morning, thousands of vehicles had downloaded the binary payload. When each vehicle finished downloading, the onboard master gateway controller initiated an automated system reboot to apply the patch. As systems powered back up, the central computer began executing the initialization sequence for the drivetrain control module. Deep inside the update package lay a freshly rewritten telemetry logging script. A software developer had accidentally deleted a single semicolon delimiter inside a core configuration parser. When the real-time operating system reached the damaged line of code, the engine encountered an unhandled syntax error. Instead of ignoring the broken parameter, the operating system entered a high-priority infinite logic loop. The broken script began requesting processor cycles at an exponential rate, executing thousands of failed read operations every microsecond. Within seconds, the main CPU reached maximum capacity, generating internal heat and starving every onboard application of working memory. The memory leak expanded rapidly until the entire volatile memory pool was exhausted. Modern electric vehicles rely on an intricate web of microcontrollers communicating across a high-speed controller area network known as a CAN bus. When the central gateway processor froze in its infinite loop, it stopped sending periodic heartbeat signals across the vehicle network. The dedicated microcontroller governing the high-voltage battery pack interpreted the silence as an emergency hardware failure. In response, high-voltage pyro-actuated relays exploded open with a dull mechanical thud, physically severing the battery pack from the electric motors. The sudden loss of high-voltage power instantly disabled the DC converter, which normally charges the 12-volt auxiliary battery from the main traction pack. Without that power supply, the small auxiliary battery was left to power every computer, screen, sensor, and light alone. Under the extreme current drain of frozen microprocessors and cooling fans, the battery was drained to 0 volts in 20 minutes. Once the 12-volt rail died, the vehicle lost all remaining consciousness.
Inside corporate headquarters in Silicon Valley, executive dashboards lit up with alerts as thousands of vehicles vanished from the global telemetry map simultaneously.
Engineering teams were summoned to emergency bridge calls in the middle of the night. At first, administrators suspected a regional cellular outage, but as distress posts overwhelmed online forums, the true scale of the failure became clear. Photographs showed luxury sedans abandoned in intersections, stranded on highway off-ramps, and blocking residential garages. In downtown Seattle, an owner was trapped inside their vehicle in an underground parking structure with no cellular reception. The electronic door buttons were dead, and the hidden manual release cable was concealed beneath a carpeted floor panel, impossible to find in total darkness. Firefighters had to break the driver's side window with a punch to extract the driver safely. Elsewhere, towing companies turned down service requests because the bricked vehicles had locked their electronic parking brakes upon failure. With dead electrical systems, the cars could not be shifted into neutral or rolled onto flatbed trailers. Back in the war room, software engineers identified the fatal parsing error within 90 minutes of investigation. They quickly compiled a corrected firmware patch, removing the corrupt telemetry string and restoring proper syntax delimiters. The fix was validated and ready for deployment within 2 hours. But when server engineers attempted to broadcast the emergency update over the air, they ran directly into an insurmountable architectural wall. The cars were completely deaf. Because the dead auxiliary battery and crashed gateway computer had disabled the internal LTE modem, the vehicles possessed no way to communicate with cloud servers. An over-the-air update requires an active receiver to accept incoming data packets. The company had built a state-of-the-art wireless distribution network, but they had effectively severed their only digital lifeline to the fleet. The vehicles were isolated islands of unpowered silicon.
The realization forced leadership to confront an unprecedented logistical disaster. There was no remote key sequence, no cloud override, and no digital master switch that could awaken the sleeping vehicles. The only path to recovery was a physical, hands-on intervention for every single disabled unit. Field engineers drafted an emergency triage manual and distributed it to regional service networks across 3 continents. The revival procedure was painstaking and mechanically complex. First, technicians had to pop open the front hood to access the dead auxiliary battery. Because the hood latch was electronically actuated, technicians had to jack up the vehicle, remove the plastic fender liner, and pull a concealed mechanical emergency release cable with pliers. Once under the hood, technicians connected an external power supply directly to the auxiliary terminals to wake up the gateway computer.
With temporary power restored, a technician plugged an external diagnostic tablet directly into the proprietary OBD port, bypassed the frozen bootloader, and manually flashed the corrected firmware file into read-only memory. Mobile repair teams were deployed across every major metropolitan area, working through freezing night temperatures to rescue stranded owners. Flatbed tow trucks equipped with specialized wheel skates hauled immovable vehicles out of subterranean parking lots. Dealership service bays were stacked 3 rows deep with silent, powerless cars awaiting manual recovery. It took 16 days of continuous field operations to manually reflash and revive 14,000 affected vehicles. The financial consequences were immediate and staggering. The manufacturer set aside hundreds of millions of dollars to cover roadside assistance, emergency repairs, customer compensation packages, and lost hardware sales. Company stock plummeted by 22% over the following 2 weeks, as automotive analysts questioned the fundamental reliability of the platform. The regulatory fallout was even more severe. Transport authorities and federal safety agencies immediately launched formal investigations into the incident, subpoenaing internal engineering communications and testing logs. Regulators demanded to know how an unverified firmware build could be deployed to consumer vehicles on active highways without manual oversight. New legislative proposals were drafted, mandating visible mechanical door releases and fail-safe hardware overrides for all critical drivetrain components in future electric vehicles. The industry had spent a decade convincing the public that the transition to software-defined mobility was cleaner, faster, and inherently superior to mechanical hardware.
Yet this single glitch exposed an unsettling reality beneath the glossy touchscreens.
In an older mechanical car, a broken cable immobilized a single vehicle. In a hyper-connected software vehicle, a single misplaced character in a remote server could instantly paralyze thousands of cars across the world. The company completely rebuilt its software validation pipelines, adding mandatory physical air gaps and immutable hardware sandboxes to ensure no firmware could ever bypass staging rings again. For the drivers who had found themselves powerless in the fast lane of Interstate 880, the illusion of digital perfection was permanently shattered. The cars were eventually returned to the road. The financial cost of the update exceeded $2 billion.